She had been teaching the village children for 3 copper coins a week when the royal messenger arrived. Maya's hands were still dusty with chalk, her threadbare dress spotted with ink stains, when the vampire in silver livery appeared at the schoolhouse door. The dozen human children scattered like sparrows, their lesson on arithmetic forgotten. The messenger's eyes swept the cramped room with its cracked slate boards and rickety benches before landing on Maya. "You are the teacher who knows the hand language," he stated rather than asked. His voice carried the peculiar flatness of someone delivering memorized instructions. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd heard the stories. Vampires didn't visit the outer villages unless someone had broken the tithe laws or crossed the territorial boundaries. Her mind raced through the past weeks, searching for any transgression she might have committed. "I know some sign language, yes," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "My younger sister was born deaf. I learned to speak with my hands so she wouldn't be alone in silence." The messenger's expression didn't change. "You will come with me to the palace. King Theron requires your services." It wasn't a request. The palace. She had never seen it except as a dark silhouette against the mountains, all spires and shadows that seemed to swallow the moonlight. Stories said King Theron ruled with ice in his veins and winter in his eyes, that he'd lost his queen to the wasting sickness 5 years ago, and had barely spoken since except to issue commands, that he had twin children no one ever saw. Before Maya could ask what services a vampire king could possibly need from a human teacher earning copper coins, the messenger added, "You have 1 hour to gather your belongings. The king does not wait." Her tiny room behind the schoolhouse held little worth gathering. 3 dresses, all faded. A few books salvaged from the manor house where she'd worked before it burned, her sister's old shawl that still smelled faintly of lavender. She wrapped them in a cloth bundle with trembling hands, said goodbye to Mrs. Chen who ran the village shop, and climbed into the messenger's carriage before her courage could fail her. The journey took 4 hours through forest roads that grew progressively darker. As if the trees themselves bowed away from the palace's presence, Maya watched the landscape change from farmland to wild woods, her stomach twisting tighter with each mile. What could the king want with sign language? The question circled her mind like a trapped bird. The palace emerged from the darkness all at once, vast and beautiful and terrifying. White stone that seemed to glow in the starlight, windows like watching eyes, towers that pierced the sky. The carriage pulled into a courtyard where fountains splashed and night-blooming flowers released their perfume into the cold air. Everything whispered of wealth that could buy kingdoms, a stark contrast to the village where children learned to write in the dirt because paper cost too much. A woman in black silk met her at the entrance, her face pale and ageless in the way of old vampires. "I am Celeste, the head of household," she said, her voice crisp. "You will be taken to the king immediately. He is expecting you." Maya barely had time to smooth her wrinkled dress before she was ushered through corridors of marble and gold, past tapestries that probably cost more than her entire village earned in a year. Servants in fine livery paused to watch her pass, their expressions ranging from curiosity to pity. She felt like a sparrow that had flown into a cathedral, small and out of place, and utterly lost. The throne room doors opened to reveal a space so vast her breath caught. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow. Pillars carved with ancient runes supported arches that framed walls hung with battle standards and ancestor portraits. At the far end, on a throne of black stone, sat King Theron. He was younger than she expected, perhaps 30 in appearance though he'd ruled for over a century. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, framing a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp cheekbones and stern mouth. He wore black armor even here in his own throne room, as if expecting attack at any moment, but it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Gray as a winter storm and just as cold, fixed on her with an intensity that made her feel transparent. Maya dropped into an awkward curtsy, her worn skirts pooling on the polished floor. "Your Majesty." Her voice echoed in the cavernous space. King Theron studied her for a long moment. "You know the hand language," he said finally. It was not a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes, Your Majesty. My sister was deaf. I learned to communicate with her from the time I was 8 years old. We developed our own signs at first. Then a traveling merchant taught us the formal signing system used in the Northern Territories." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "My children, Prince Cassian and Princess Lyra, were born deaf. 5 years old now. They have had tutors, specialists, even healers brought from across the realm. Nothing has given them their hearing. The sign language tutors we've hired have been inadequate, treating my children as defective rather than different." His voice remained level, but Maya heard the thread of steel beneath it, the rage of a father who'd watched his children suffer. "They've been isolated," he continued, standing from his throne. Each movement was controlled, predatory grace barely contained. They cannot communicate with most of the palace staff. They cannot tell me when they're hurt or afraid or happy. I watch them sign to each other in their own invented language, and I understand nothing." His eyes met hers again, and she saw something raw in their depths before his expression shuddered. "You will teach them proper sign language. You will teach me. You will teach my household staff. And you will do it as if their lives depend on it. Because in many ways, they do." Maya's mind reeled. The weight of his expectation pressed down on her like a physical thing. "Your Majesty, I'm honored, but I'm just a village teacher. I've never worked with royal children, or in a palace setting. Surely there are more qualified people who could help." The king descended from his throne, each step deliberate. When he reached her, she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was tall enough that she barely reached his shoulder, and this close she could see the faint shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his jaw that spoke of sleepless nights and carried burdens. "Every expert I've brought has failed," he said quietly. "They see my children as a problem to be solved rather than people to be understood. They use methods that frighten Cassian and frustrate Lyra. One tried to force them to read lips, as if willpower alone could compensate for what they cannot hear. Another insisted on separating them, claiming their twin bond was preventing proper language development." His voice dropped even lower. "I watched my daughter cry silently because she had no way to tell anyone she missed her brother. That tutor was dismissed within an hour." Maya's heart clenched. She thought of her sister Arya, how the village children used to mock her, how even well-meaning adults would speak slowly and loudly as if volume could bridge the gap that hearing couldn't cross, how Arya's face had lit up the first time Maya had signed back to her, proving she wasn't alone in her silent world. "I understand," Maya said softly. "Communication isn't just about mechanics. It's about being seen and heard. Even without sound." Something flickered in the king's eyes. "Precisely." He turned, pacing toward the windows that overlooked his dark kingdom. "My children need someone who sees them as whole, not broken. Someone who understands that sign language isn't a consolation prize but a language as rich and complete as any spoken word." He paused, his broad shoulders tense beneath the armor. "I need someone who will treat them with patience and dignity. From what my messenger observed, you do exactly that with your village students." Maya felt heat creep up her neck. "Your messenger was watching me teach? For 3 weeks." The king's tone was matter of fact. "I don't trust my children to anyone without thorough investigation." He'd been watching her, investigating her. The thought should have felt intrusive, but instead she felt the weight of a father's desperate love. He'd left nothing to chance. "I'll do my best, Your Majesty," she said. "But I should be honest. I know basic sign language and can teach communication, but I'm not a formal educator of deaf children. I learned from necessity and love, not from books or institutions." "Then you have exactly what they need." He turned back to face her. "Now, as to your employment terms. You will live in the palace, of course. Your quarters will be in the family wing. Near the children's rooms. You'll take your meals with the household, not in the servants' hall. Your salary will be 500 gold sovereigns per year. Maya's knees nearly buckled. 500 gold sovereigns. She currently earned the copper equivalent of perhaps 20 sovereigns annually, and half of that went to the schoolhouse fund for books and supplies. That's far too much, Your Majesty, she stammered. I couldn't possibly accept such a sum for teaching. The king's expression hardened. You're not just teaching. You're giving my children a voice. You're giving me back the ability to speak with them. You're potentially transforming how my entire household communicates. 500 sovereigns is insufficient if anything, but it's what I'm offering. There was something else in his face now, something vulnerable beneath the stern facade. And there is one more condition. Maya waited, her heart pounding. Marry me. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Maya's ears rang as if she'd been struck. I beg your pardon? Marry me, King Theron repeated. His voice remained steady, but she saw his hands clench briefly before he forced them to relax. Before you refuse, hear my reasoning. My children need stability. They've had a parade of tutors and specialists who come and go, each one another abandonment in their young lives. If you're family, if you're their stepmother, they'll know you're permanent, that you won't leave them the moment the contract ends or a better offer comes along. And he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Marry me and you'll have the authority to implement changes throughout the palace. The servants will have to learn signing if their queen commands it. The court will respect you. My children will have someone with legal standing to protect them if anything happens to me. This is insane, Maya whispered. You don't know me. I don't know you. Marriage is not something to be entered into as an employment contract. I'm aware this is unorthodox. His gray eyes held hers. But I've investigated you thoroughly, Maya Thorne. I know you've been teaching for 5 years, taking a salary barely above poverty to give village children an education they'd never otherwise receive. I know you've been supporting your elderly parents and that you send half your earnings to a school for deaf children in the capital city. I know you turned down a marriage proposal from the merchant's son because you refused to give up teaching. You're kind, dedicated, and you understand what my children need. That's more than I had with my first marriage, which was arranged when I was 20 and she was 18. We grew to care for each other over time, but we started as strangers fulfilling duty. He was right that marriages among nobility were often arrangements, but this felt different. This felt desperate. And what do you get from this arrangement, Your Majesty? Besides someone to teach your children? I get someone I can trust in a court full of vipers, he said bluntly. Someone whose loyalty I've already witnessed. Someone who won't use my children as political leverage. And perhaps, if fortune favors us, someone my children might come to love as a mother. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. They barely remember their birth mother. Lyra has nightmares and cannot tell me why. Cassian stopped trying to communicate with me months ago because I couldn't understand his signs. I'm losing them to silence, and I will do anything, to bring them back. Maya stood in the vast throne room, her mind spinning like leaves in a windstorm. This vampire king, this powerful ruler who could have anything he wanted, was asking her to marry him not out of love or even political alliance, but out of pure, desperate parental devotion. It was the most insane thing she'd ever heard. It was also oddly compelling. You're asking me to marry you before I've even met your children, she said finally. What if they don't like me? What if I can't help them? Then we'll have a political marriage like thousands of others. And you'll still be wealthier and more comfortable than you've ever been. His pragmatism should have been off-putting. But there was something honest about it. No pretense of romance or flowery words, just truth laid bare. But I don't think that will happen. I've watched you with children, remember? You have a gift for seeing them as individuals. Maya thought of her cramped schoolhouse, the leaking roof she couldn't afford to repair, the children who came hungry because their parents chose between food and education and had to choose food. She thought of the letter she'd received last week from the capital school saying they might have to close due to lack of funding. She thought of how many children she could help with 500 gold sovereigns a year, and she thought of 2 5-year-old children, isolated in this vast palace, unable to communicate with their own father. "May I meet them first?" she asked. "Before I give you my answer?" Relief flickered across King Theron's face so quickly she almost missed it. Of course. He strode toward a side door, expecting her to follow. "They're in the nursery wing. I should warn you, they're wary of strangers. Don't expect them to warm to you immediately." The nursery wing was surprisingly bright compared to the rest of the palace's Gothic grandeur. Large windows let in starlight, and the walls were painted in soft colors rather than the dark stone of the public spaces. Toys were scattered across plush carpets, books lined low shelves, and 2 small desks sat near the window. Everything a child could want except the one thing they needed most: the ability to be understood. King Theron opened a door to reveal a large playroom. 2 children sat on the floor surrounded by wooden blocks, building something elaborate. They looked up as the door opened, and Maya's breath caught. They were beautiful. Prince Cassian had his father's dark hair and serious gray eyes, his small face set in concentration. Princess Lyra had honey-colored hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, her eyes a startling green that must have come from her mother. Both children froze when they saw their father. Then their eyes slid to Maya with cautious curiosity. The king's hands moved in what Maya recognized as very basic signs. This is Maya. She knows hand language. She might stay and teach you. His signing was clumsy, grammatically incorrect, and clearly frustrating for him. But he was trying, and that counted for something. The twins looked at each other, hands flying in rapid signs that Maya had never seen before. Their own invented language, she realized, born from necessity when no one else could speak to them. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Maya stepped forward slowly, keeping her movements gentle and non-threatening. She knelt on the floor several feet away from them, giving them space. Then her hands began to move. "Hello," she signed clearly. "My name is Maya. It's nice to meet you." She fingerspelled her name slowly, then added the sign for teacher. "I had a sister who was deaf. We talked with our hands too." Both children's eyes went wide. Princess Lyra's hands lifted hesitantly. "You know real signs? Not just father's baby signs?" Maya couldn't help but smile at the perfectly executed sass in the little girl's signing. "Yes, I know real signs. And I can teach you more if you'd like. What are you building?" Prince Cassian's face remained serious, but his hands answered. "A castle. For dragons. Lyra says dragons need tall towers to land on." His signing was fluid, natural, full of personality. "Do you like dragons?" Maya signed back. Both children nodded vigorously. Lyra's hands moved again. "Father says dragons are extinct, but we think some might be hiding. Do you think dragons could be hiding?" "It's a reasonable theory," Maya signed. "Dragons are very clever. If any survived, they would definitely hide from people who don't believe in them." Cassian studied her intently. "Are you going to try to make us talk with our mouths?" Another tutor tried to make me put my hands on her throat and copy the vibrations. I didn't like it. Maya's heart broke a little. "No," she signed firmly. "Sign language is a real language. It's not less than speaking. It's different, and it's beautiful, and it's yours. You don't need to change how you communicate. The world needs to change how it listens." Something shifted in both children's postures. The wariness didn't disappear entirely, but it softened. Lyra scooted a few inches closer. "Can you teach us the sign for butterfly? I saw one yesterday and didn't know how to tell father about it." Maya showed them the sign for butterfly, hands fluttering like delicate wings. Both children copied it, giggling silently at the motion. Then Cassian signed. "Can you teach Father too? He tries, but he's very bad at it. No grammar. It's painful to watch." Maya had to suppress her laugh. "Yes, I can teach your father too. We'll make him better." Behind her, King Theron cleared his throat. "I'm standing right here. You realize I can see you signing about me." Lyra's hands moved quick as lightning. "Then you should learn faster, so you know what we're saying." The little girl had sass for days, and Maya absolutely loved it. She spent the next hour with the twins, learning their invented signs and teaching them proper ones, playing their building game and earning small smiles. Cassian was methodical and serious, carefully executing each new sign multiple times to perfect it. Lyra was impulsive and creative, already modifying signs to suit her personal style. Both were clever, funny, and desperately hungry for communication. When Celeste came to tell them it was dinner time, both children's faces fell. Lyra's hands moved quickly. "Are you leaving now? Like the others?" "They always leave after meeting us once." Maya's heart clenched. She looked at King Theron, who stood by the window watching his children with an expression of such raw longing it hurt to see. Then she looked back at the twins, these two small people who'd been isolated for so long, and made her decision. "I'm not leaving," she signed. "I'm going to stay and teach you. If you'll have me." Both children's faces lit up with hope so bright it was almost painful. Maya found King Theron in his private study an hour later, after the twins had been fed dinner and reluctantly agreed to prepare for bed. Celeste had shown her to guest quarters, sumptuous rooms that felt absurdly large compared to her tiny village space. But Maya couldn't rest until she'd given the king her answer. He looked up from his desk when she entered, his expression carefully neutral. "You've decided?" "Yes." She closed the door behind her and approached his desk. It was covered in papers, maps, what looked like trade agreements and military reports, the weight of a kingdom spread across dark wood. "I'll accept your proposal, but I have conditions of my own." Something that might have been surprise flickered in his eyes. "Go on. First, I want the salary you mentioned donated to schools for deaf children across the realm. I'll take a more modest payment for personal expenses. But I don't need that much money. It can do more good elsewhere." The king's eyebrows rose. "That's your first condition? To give away your salary?" "It's not really my salary if I'm going to be queen, is it?" Maya pointed out. "I'll have access to everything I need. The money should help children like yours who don't have royal resources." There was a long pause, then King Theron nodded slowly. "Agreed. What else?" "Second, this marriage may be practical in nature, but I won't be treated as an employee. If I'm to be the children's stepmother, I need real authority. That means I can dismiss servants who refuse to learn signing. It means I can implement changes to make the palace more accessible. It means I have equal say in decisions about Cassian and Lyra's education and care." "You'll have all of that," he said immediately. "As queen consort, you'll have authority over the household. I'll make sure the court understands your word is law in matters concerning the children." "Third," Maya continued, her courage building, "I need to know you won't interfere if I need to make your children uncomfortable in order to help them grow. Good teaching sometimes means pushing boundaries. If Cassian is being stubborn about learning something difficult, or if Lyra is scared to try a new skill, I need to know you'll support my methods even if they cry." The king's jaw tightened. "I won't have them mistreated. I'm not talking about mistreatment. I'm talking about growth." Maya stepped closer. Children need to struggle sometimes. They need to fail and try again. They need adults who believe they can do hard things, not adults who coddle them because they're deaf. Your children are smart and capable, but they've been wrapped in cotton wool. That's not helping them. You want me to trust you to push them. His voice was flat. "I want you to trust that I love teaching and would never harm a child," she corrected. "But yes, if we're going to do this, we do it right. That means sometimes you'll hear things secondhand that worry you, and you'll need to talk to me before you react." The Vampire King studied her for a long moment. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. Finally, he said, "Agreed. Anything else?" "One more thing." She took a breath. "This marriage may be practical, but I won't share your bed until and unless we both want to. I'm agreeing to be the children's mother and your queen in name. The rest comes only if genuine affection develops. I won't be bought." For the first time, something that might have been respect entered his expression. "That's acceptable." "Truth be told, I'm not looking for romance. I'm looking for help. The rest of it, the companionship, the intimacy, we can figure out if it happens naturally or not at all." Maya felt relief flood through her. "Good. Then yes. I'll marry you." "When?" "Tomorrow," he said simply. "We can have a quiet ceremony in the palace chapel. The court can be informed after the fact. Small weddings cause fewer political complications. Tomorrow?" Maya's voice squeaked. "That's incredibly fast. You want time to reconsider?" There was a challenge in his tone. "No," she said firmly. "But I'll need to send word to my parents and my school. They deserve to know I'm not coming back. I've already sent messengers with generous explanations and compensation," the king said. "Your parents have been informed you're taking a palace position. They'll be told about the marriage after it occurs, with suitable gifts. Your school will receive funding to hire 2 new teachers and repair the building. You've already arranged all of this? Before I even agreed?" I was confident in my assessment of your character. His tone was matter of fact. "You care deeply about helping others, especially children. The opportunity to help my twins and fund education across the realm would be nearly impossible for you to refuse." It was manipulative, and she should have been angry, but she couldn't muster the emotion. He was right, and his manipulation came from a place of desperate love for his children, not selfish gain. "You're very certain of yourself, Your Majesty." "Theron," he corrected. "If we're to be married, even politically, you should use my name. We're in private." "Theron," she repeated. The name felt strange on her tongue. "I should warn you, I'm not good at palace politics. I say what I think. I'll offend people." "Good," he said. "I'm tired of people who say nothing of substance. The court could use someone genuine." The wedding ceremony the next evening was indeed small, just Celeste as witness. A priest who looked ancient even by vampire standards, and the twins who watched from the front pew with wide, curious eyes. Maya wore a simple blue dress from the palace stores, nothing fancy or elaborate. Theron wore his customary black, though he'd removed the armor for this at least. The ceremony was brief, words spoken in formal cadence that felt more like a business contract than a sacred union. When the priest pronounced them married, Theron pressed a chaste kiss to Maya's forehead, formal and distant. Then he signed to his children, "This is Maya. She's your new mother. She will take care of you." The words should have felt presumptuous, but both children smiled. Maya's first week as queen was overwhelming and wonderful and exhausting all at once. The palace staff treated her with careful respect, though she caught whispers when they thought she couldn't hear. The human queen. Married to secure the children's care. Poor thing doesn't know what she's gotten into. Let them whisper. She had work to do. Every morning she spent 3 hours with Cassian and Lyra, teaching them formal sign language while weaving in academic lessons. Math could be taught through counting signs, history through signed storytelling, science through describing the world in hand shapes. Both children soaked up knowledge like drought-parched earth drinking rain. Cassian had a gift for memorization and loved learning the etymology of signs. Lyra was creative, always asking what-if questions and inventing new ways to express complex ideas. In the afternoons, Maya held mandatory signing classes for palace staff. She'd expected resistance, but Theron had made it clear that anyone who refused to learn would be dismissed. The servants came, some eager, some reluctant, all gradually understanding that this wasn't optional. Within 3 weeks, basic signs were appearing throughout the palace. Guards signing greetings to the twins, cooks signing about meals, even the head steward practicing fingerspelling in his spare time. The evenings were reserved for family dinners, a new tradition Maya had insisted upon. Theron joined them when his duties allowed, sitting at a smaller table in the nursery rather than the formal dining hall. He was learning to sign faster now, motivated by his children's obvious delight when he successfully communicated with them. Tonight, Lyra was telling him about a bird she'd seen in the garden. Her hands moved rapidly, describing its colors and song with elaborate gestures. Theron followed along, his brow furrowed in concentration, occasionally looking to Maya for clarification. It was a cardinal, Maya translated when Lyra got to a sign Theron didn't know. The red bird with the crest. Oh, Theron signed back to his daughter. Beautiful. Did you draw a picture? Lyra nodded enthusiastically and ran to get her sketchbook. In her absence, Cassian's hands moved quietly. Father, you're getting better at signing. Thank you, son. The formality of the exchange made Maya's heart ache. There was love there, but also distance, a gap that years of miscommunication had carved between father and son. Can I ask you something? Cassian continued. His small hands were careful, precise. Always, Theron signed back. Are you happy that Maya is here? The question hung in the air. Theron's eyes met his son's, then flicked to Maya. She kept her expression neutral, curious about his answer but not wanting to influence it. Yes. Theron signed slowly. I am happy she is here. Are you? Cassian's face, so serious and small, broke into a rare smile. Yes. She makes the quiet less lonely. Maya had to look away, sudden tears burning her eyes. When Lyra returned with her drawing, a remarkable sketch of a cardinal in flight, the moment passed into easy conversation about art and birds, and whether dragons might also have beautiful songs. After the children were in bed, Maya found Theron still in the family sitting room staring into the fireplace. She'd learned he often stayed here after tucking the twins in, as if reluctant to return to his cold formal chambers. May I join you? She asked aloud. He nodded, gesturing to the chair opposite his. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Then Theron spoke. You've accomplished more in 3 weeks than I managed in 5 years. That's not true, Maya said. You kept them safe. You fought for them even when you didn't know how. That matters. I couldn't speak to them. His voice was raw. My own children, and I couldn't tell them I loved them. Couldn't ask if they were sad or hurt. Couldn't share their joy when they discovered something wonderful. Do you know what that does to a parent? Watching your children grow further away from you every day, and knowing it's because of your own inadequacy? Maya chose her words carefully. You're not inadequate. You didn't know sign language. That's education, not character. His hands clenched on the armrests. I'm a king. I have scholars, resources, the wealth to hire anyone. I should have learned years ago. Should have made it a priority the moment I knew they were deaf. Instead, I kept hoping some healer would fix them. Some magical cure would appear. I treated their deafness as a problem to be solved rather than a difference to be accommodated. And that was wrong. There was self-loathing in every word. Maya understood then that this man, this powerful vampire ruler, carried enormous guilt. He blamed himself for his children's isolation, for every moment of loneliness they'd experienced. It was eating him alive. Theron, she said gently. Look at me, he did, his gray eyes meeting hers. You're learning now. You're changing now. That's what matters. Children don't need perfect parents. They need parents who try, who grow, who admit mistakes and do better. You're doing that." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Thank you. For being kind when you could be condemningly judgmental." "I wouldn't judge you," she said honestly. "I've seen how much you love them. Love doesn't always know the right way to express itself immediately. We learn as we go. We're not so different, you know." His statement surprised her. "How so?" "We both feel responsible for people we love. You with your students, your sister's memory. Me with my children, my kingdom. We both carry the weight of wanting to do right by them and fearing we're not enough." Maya considered this. "You're right. Though I have to say, my stakes are slightly lower than running a vampire kingdom." He almost smiled. "The pressure is relative. You care about each child in your schoolhouse as deeply as I care about my realm. That's not lesser responsibility. It's differently shaped." They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their pasts. Maya learned that Theron had been a soldier before becoming king, that he'd never expected to rule but his older brother had died in battle, that he'd married his first wife out of duty but had grown to genuinely care for her, making her death 5 years ago devastating not just for the loss of a partner, but for the loss of the only person who truly understood the weight of his crown, that his children being born deaf had felt like a curse at first until he'd watched them develop their own language and realized they weren't broken, just different, and he was the one failing them by not learning their language. The palace began to transform in subtle ways. Signs appeared on doors in both written words and illustrated hand shapes. The library created a section of books about deaf culture and signing. The twins started joining certain court functions, no longer hidden away as if their deafness were something shameful. Maya watched these changes with satisfaction. But she knew deeper work remained. Cassian had nightmares most nights, waking in silent terror, unable to cry out. Lyra had an explosive temper when frustrated, throwing objects because she had no other way to express her overwhelming feelings. Both children struggled with emotional regulation, unsurprising given years of being unable to communicate their needs. And Theron, for all his progress with signing, still held himself at a careful distance from his children, as if afraid that getting too close would somehow hurt them again. One afternoon, Maya found Cassian sitting alone in the library, tears streaming down his face. He held a book about horses, one of his favorite subjects, but wasn't reading. She approached slowly, sitting beside him. "What's wrong?" She signed. His hands trembled as they moved. "I miss Mother. I don't remember her face anymore. Father has paintings, but they don't feel real. I just remember her smell like flowers and the way her hands felt. But I don't remember if she knew signs. Did she talk to me?" Maya's heart broke. She gathered the small boy into her arms, letting him cry silently against her shoulder. After a few moments, she signed. "Your mother loved you very much. She didn't know many signs because you were very young when she got sick, but she would hold you and your sister for hours. Your father told me she used to make up little games with her hands, silly things that made you laugh even if they weren't proper signs. She was learning, just like your father is learning now." Cassian pulled back enough to sign. Is father learning because he has to, or because he wants to? "Because he wants to know you," Maya signed firmly, "because every day he realizes how much of you he's been missing, and it breaks his heart. He loves you so much it scares him sometimes." That night at dinner, Maya made a decision. She looked at Theron and signed, "We need to talk about the twins' mother." About Alara. His entire body went rigid. The twins, who had been chattering about their day, stopped and watched their father with wide eyes. "This is not appropriate dinner conversation," Theron signed back, his movements sharp. "This is exactly the right time," Maya countered. "Cassian asked me about her today. He's forgetting her and it's hurting him. Lyra deserves to know about her mother too. You can't keep pretending she never existed just because it's painful." Theron's eyes flashed with something dark. "You overstep." "No," Maya signed, not backing down. "I'm being the mother they need." Sometimes that means pushing conversations that hurt. Tell them about Alara. Tell them about their mother. The tension in the room could have been cut with a knife. The twins looked between Maya and their father, uncertainty written across their small faces. Then Theron signed, slowly, and with visible effort. Your mother was brave. His hands trembled slightly. She was human, like Maya. When she found out she was carrying twins, the healers told her it was too dangerous, that human bodies aren't meant to carry vampire children. The pregnancy could kill her. He paused, his jaw working. She chose to have you anyway. Lyra's hands moved hesitantly. She died because of us? Theron's face crumpled for just a moment before he regained control. No. She died because of the wasting sickness that came after you were born. But she was weakened from the pregnancy, and her body couldn't fight it. She held on for 4 months after you were born. She loved you both so much. He looked down at his hands. When the healers told us you were deaf, she didn't care. She started learning signs immediately. She used to sign lullabies to you, making up her own signs when she didn't know the proper ones. You would watch her hands and smile. Both of you. Cassian's voice would have been a whisper if he could speak. Did she know we loved her? Yes, Theron signed. At the end, when she was very weak, you both crawled into her bed. You were only a few months old, but somehow you knew. You laid your tiny hands on her chest, feeling her heartbeat. When it stopped, you both cried. That was the last time I heard either of you make a sound. Lyra climbed out of her chair and went to her father, wrapping her small arms around his waist. He pulled her close, then reached for Cassian, gathering both children into an embrace. Maya watched them, tears streaming freely down her face. This was what healing looked like. Messy and painful and necessary. Later, after the children were asleep, Theron found Maya in her chambers. He didn't knock, just entered and stood in the doorway looking haggard. You had no right, he said aloud, his voice rough. I had every right, Maya countered. Those children need to know their mother. They need to know their history. And you need to stop carrying that guilt alone. It's eating you alive. You know nothing about what I carry. No? She stood, facing him. I know you blame yourself for Alara's death. I know you think if you'd forbidden the pregnancy, she'd still be alive. I know you look at your children and see your wife's sacrifice and it makes you feel like you don't deserve their love. Am I wrong? His silence was answer enough. Theron's mask cracked. For the first time since Maya had met him, she saw past the controlled exterior to the grief beneath. Alara was dying anyway, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The healers had warned us years before. Some humans who marry vampires develop an intolerance to our blood magic. It's rare, but fatal. She had maybe 5 years left when we discovered she was pregnant. He moved into the room, pacing like a caged animal. So when the healers said the pregnancy would weaken her further, possibly cut her remaining time in half, she said she didn't care. That she wanted children. That 2 years with babies was worth more than 5 years without them. I tried to talk her out of it. He stopped, facing the window. We fought about it. The only real fight we ever had. She told me I was being selfish, that I was choosing her over the children we could have. And maybe she was right. But God, Maya, I just didn't want to lose her. But you didn't get to make that choice, Maya said gently. It was her body, her life, her decision. I know, he said. Intellectually, I know. But it doesn't stop me from wondering what if. What if I'd convinced her to wait? What if we'd never had children? She might still be alive. She'd also be miserable, Maya pointed out. You said she wanted children. Denying her that wouldn't have saved her. It just would have made her remaining time less fulfilling. Theron's shoulders sagged. The twins look like her. Lyra has her eyes, that exact shade of green. Cassian has her stubborn chin. Every time I look at them, I see her sacrifice, and then they couldn't hear, couldn't speak, and I couldn't communicate with them. It felt like punishment, like I was being shown everything Alara had given up to create them, and I couldn't even be a proper father to them. That's why you kept your distance, Maya realized. Not because you didn't love them, but because you loved them too much and didn't know how to bridge the gap, and every time you failed to understand them, it felt like failing Alara all over again. Yes, the word was torn from him. So you hired tutors and specialists, trying to fix what you saw as your failure. But none of them worked because they were trying to change the children instead of changing the environment around them. Maya crossed to him, laying a gentle hand on his arm. Theron, your children don't need to be fixed. They just needed you to learn their language. And you are. You're doing the work now. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then up at her face. You make it sound simple. It is simple, she said. Not easy, but simple. You show up. You try. You fail sometimes and try again. You let them see you struggling and keep going anyway. That's what children need, to see their parents are human too. Imperfect but trying. I'm not human, he said with a ghost of a smile. You know what I mean. For a long moment, they stood there, her hand on his arm, something shifting in the air between them. Then Theron said quietly, "Thank you. For pushing. For being what they need even when I resist it. For treating this political marriage as if it were real." It is real, Maya said. Maybe not in the way traditional marriages are. But it's real. We're partners in this, in raising them, in helping them thrive. That's real. His gray eyes met hers, and she saw something warm in them for the first time. You're extraordinary. You know that? I'm really not, she protested. I'm just a village teacher who knows sign language. No, he said firmly. You're a woman who sees people others overlook, who fights for children who can't fight for themselves, who walked into a palace full of vampires and refused to be intimidated because 2 small children needed you. That's extraordinary. Heat crept up Maya's neck. She'd never been good with compliments. I should check on the twins. They had nightmares last week and I want to make sure they're sleeping peacefully. Theron nodded, stepping back. His hand briefly touched hers as she moved past. Thank you, Maya. For everything. The twins were indeed sleeping peacefully, curled up in their separate beds in the adjoining room. Cassian clutched a stuffed horse, his dark hair falling across his forehead. Lyra had kicked off her blankets as usual, sprawled dramatically across her mattress. Maya tucked the blanket back around her, smoothing her honey-colored hair. These children. She'd known them barely 2 months, and already loved them fiercely. Already wanted to shield them from every hurt, fight every battle on their behalf. It was terrifying and wonderful in equal measure. A sound made her turn. Theron stood in the doorway, watching his children sleep. The expression on his face was naked longing and love and regret. Join me, Maya signed. He crossed the room silently, standing beside her. Together they watched the twins breathe, small chests rising and falling in the peaceful rhythm of sleep. I used to come here every night, Theron signed, his movements barely visible in the dim light. I would watch them sleep and try to memorize their faces, afraid I was losing them even though they were right here. You're not losing them anymore, Maya signed back. You're finding them again. His hand found hers in the darkness. They stood like that, fingers intertwined, watching over the sleeping children. It wasn't romantic. Not exactly. But it was intimate. A shared moment of parental devotion that bound them together more surely than any wedding vows. When they finally left the nursery, Theron walked Maya to her chambers. At her door, he paused. I know this marriage started as a convenience, he said aloud, his voice low. But I want you to know I'm grateful for you. Not just for what you do for my children, but for who you are. Maya felt her heart skip. That's the closest thing to a romantic sentiment you've said since we met. Is it working? He almost smiled. Because I'm not very practiced at this. You're doing fine, she assured him. Good night, Theron. Good night, Maya. He hesitated, then leaned forward and pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle and chaste. Her skin tingled where his lips had touched. She watched him walk away down the corridor, his shoulders no longer quite so rigid. Spring arrived at the palace with explosive color. The gardens burst into bloom, filling the courtyards with perfume and butterflies. Maya began taking the twins outside for lessons, teaching them the signs for different flowers, for growth, for seasons changing. They were thriving. Cassian had started writing stories, elaborate tales about knights and dragons that he'd sign for anyone willing to watch. Lyra had discovered painting, creating vivid canvases that hung throughout the family quarters. Both children had grown confident, no longer shrinking from strangers but engaging with palace staff who'd learned to sign. And Theron. Theron had transformed from a distant formal father to someone who played with his children, who told them signed bedtime stories, who got down on the floor to see their creations. He still wasn't perfect at signing, still had to ask Maya for help with complex concepts, but his children no longer felt unknown to him. Which meant he could relax. And a relaxed Theron was something Maya hadn't anticipated. She'd expected the stern vampire king, all rigid control and formal distance. What she got was a man with a dry sense of humor, who made sarcastic observations about the ridiculous politics of court, who once actually laughed out loud when Lyra signed an incredibly insulting description of a pompous nobleman. He was also, Maya was beginning to realize, quite handsome when he smiled. It happened gradually. Small moments that added up to something larger. The way he'd catch her eye across the dinner table when one of the twins said something particularly amusing. The way his hand would linger on her shoulder when he thanked her for something. The way he'd started seeking her out in the evenings, not for discussions about the children, but just for company. They'd sit together in the library or on the balcony, talking about everything and nothing. She learned about his childhood as a second son who never expected to rule. He learned about her village, her sister, her dreams of opening a school where all children, hearing or deaf, could learn together. The conversations grew deeper, more personal, more intimate even without physical touch. I never expected to care about someone again, Theron admitted one evening. They were in his study. Maya had brought him tea while he worked on kingdom correspondence. After Alara died, I thought that part of me was finished. That I'd had my chance at love and lost it. And that was simply fate. Maya settled into the chair across from his desk. Love isn't a limited resource. You can love more than one person in a lifetime. I know, he said. But I didn't want to. It felt safer to stay closed off. Less painful. And now? Now I find myself thinking about you at the most inconvenient times. Her heart skipped. What kind of thoughts? He set down his quill, meeting her eyes. I think about the way you sign stories for the children. Your hands painting pictures in the air. I think about how you laugh at Lyra's jokes even when they're not particularly funny. Because you know she needs that validation. I think about how you pushed me to talk about Alara when I was hiding from the grief. I think about how you're brave and kind, and you see the best in people even when they don't deserve it. His voice dropped lower. I think about what it would be like to kiss you properly. Not on the forehead like a political gesture, but like a man who's falling in love with his wife. Maya couldn't breathe. The air felt thick, charged with something electric. You're falling in love with me? I think I might be, he admitted. I know this complicates our arrangement. I know you agreed to a political marriage with clear boundaries. If you want to maintain those boundaries, I'll respect that. But I needed to be honest with you. I needed you to know that my feelings have changed. She stood, crossing to his side of the desk. He remained seated, looking up at her with an expression so open it made her chest ache. "Theron," she said softly. "Yes?" "My feelings have changed too." Something blazed in his eyes. "Truly?" She nodded. "I didn't plan on this. I thought I was here just for the children. But then I saw you with them, saw you trying so hard to be better for them, saw you vulnerable and grieving and determined, and I realized you're not just the stern king I thought you were. You're a good man who's been carrying impossible weight alone. And I want to help you carry it, not because I have to, because I want to." His hand came up to cradle her cheek. His skin was cool against hers, his touch gentle despite his strength. "May I kiss you?" "Please," she whispered. He stood, his other hand moving to her waist, pulling her close. Then his lips met hers, soft and questioning at first. When she responded, leaning into him, the kiss deepened. It was nothing like the chaste forehead kiss on their wedding day. This was real. This was want and affection, and the beginning of something that could become love. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Theron rested his forehead against hers. "This is unexpected," he murmured. "The best things usually are," Maya replied. They stood like that for a long moment, wrapped in each other, before a small sound made them both turn. Lyra stood in the doorway, her eyes wide and delighted. Her hands flew into motion. "Are you two kissing?" Finally, Cassian appears behind his sister. Father has been making moon eyes at Maya for weeks. It was getting embarrassing. Both adults felt their faces heat. The court noticed the shift in dynamics within days. Suddenly, King Theron and Queen Maya weren't just political partners, but something more. He'd touch her hand during court functions. She'd lean close to whisper something to him. They'd share private smiles across crowded rooms. Not everyone was pleased. Lady Cordelia, a vampire noblewoman who'd been vying for the king's attention for years, made her displeasure known through pointed comments about human queens and their limited lifespans. Lord Bastian questioned Maya's qualifications to influence policy. Several court members muttered about the impropriety of the king's affections being swayed by a commoner. The whispers reached a crescendo when Maya made a proposal to the council. She wanted to establish schools throughout the realm where deaf and hearing children could learn together. She wanted sign language taught in all royal institutions. She wanted laws protecting deaf citizens from discrimination. "It's too expensive," Lord Bastian argued during the council meeting. "The Treasury can't support such extensive educational reform." "We have the funds," Maya countered. "The question is whether we have the will. These are your citizens. They deserve equal opportunity to participate in society." "They're a tiny minority," Lady Cordelia interjected. "Surely they can simply adapt to the majority rather than expecting the entire realm to accommodate them." Maya felt her temper rise but kept her voice level. "My stepchildren are part of that minority. Are you suggesting they should simply adapt rather than expecting their own kingdom to accommodate them?" The room went silent. Challenging Lady Cordelia directly was dangerous. The woman had powerful family connections and a vindictive streak. Lady Cordelia's eyes narrowed. "I'm suggesting that perhaps the Queen's personal investment in this issue is clouding her judgment. Perhaps decisions about the realm shouldn't be made based on the needs of two children, however royal they may be." Theron's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "My wife's proposal is sound, and we will implement it. The cost is irrelevant. If this kingdom can afford golden chandeliers in every hall, it can afford to educate all its children." Debate ended, but the damage was done. As Maya left the council chambers, she overheard fragments of conversation. "She's using those children to gain power. The king is besotted and can't see clearly. How long before she pushes for more changes? The human queen won't last. They never do." The words stung more than Maya wanted to admit. That evening she found herself in the garden, sitting by the fountain, trying to process her swirling emotions. She'd known court politics would be difficult, but she hadn't anticipated how personal the attacks would feel. "Maya?" Theron's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him approaching, concern written across his face. "I'm fine," she said automatically. "You're not." He sat beside her on the stone bench. "I heard what Cordelia said. And the others. I'm sorry. You shouldn't have to defend yourself against such viciousness." "It comes with the position," Maya said, trying to sound unbothered. "Queens make decisions that upset people. I knew that. Yes, but there's a difference between political disagreement and personal attacks." He took her hand. "They're threatened by you, by the changes you're bringing, by the fact that I've fallen in love with you and they can't manipulate me through loneliness anymore." "You've said it," she realized. "That you love me. Is that all right?" His gray eyes searched hers. "Because I do love you, Maya. I love your compassion and your strength. I love how fiercely you protect my children. I love how you make me want to be better. I love you." Tears pricked her eyes. "I love you too. Even though this is complicated and terrifying and people are going to make our lives difficult because of it. I love you anyway." He kissed her then, tender and deep, as if trying to pour everything he felt into the gesture. When they broke apart, he said, "Let them whisper. Let them disapprove. You're my wife, my queen, and the mother of my children. No court gossip can change that, but what if they're right?" Maya's voice cracked. "What if I'm pushing too hard? Too fast? What if I'm using the children as justification for changes that benefit me personally?" "Are the changes good for the realm?" Theron asked. "Yes," she said immediately. "Deaf citizens deserve equal opportunity. Children deserve comprehensive education. These are basic rights, not special privileges. Then you're not wrong to push for them. The fact that you personally benefit doesn't make the cause less just. It makes you the right person to champion it because you understand it intimately." "But I'm human," Maya said quietly. The thing they're not saying out loud, but they're all thinking. "I'll age and die while you and the children stay young. What happens then? Does everything I build fall apart because I'm not here to maintain it?" Theron's hand tightened on hers. "Then we make sure the changes are codified into law. Structural, not dependent on one person. And as for your mortality," he paused, his expression conflicted. "There are ways to extend human life when bound to vampire families. Blood bonds, magic, ancient rituals. If you wanted, when the time came. We could discuss options." Maya's heart raced. "You're talking about turning me. Eventually. Not now. You're young, healthy. But yes, eventually, if you wanted it, we could explore ways to extend your life. To keep you with us." The offer hung between them, enormous and complicated. Maya spent the next several days thinking about Theron's offer. Immortality, or something close to it. The chance to see Cassian and Lyra grow up fully, to watch the schools she wanted to build flourish, to spend centuries with Theron instead of mere decades. But also, the cost, losing her humanity, watching her parents age and die, becoming something other than what she was born. It wasn't a decision to make lightly. Meanwhile, the court opposition escalated. Someone leaked details of Maya's educational proposal to the kingdom's newspapers, framing it as expensive frivolity. Pamphlets appeared in the capital arguing against special treatment for deaf citizens. Lady Cordelia hosted a dinner party specifically excluding Maya while inviting every other noble of importance. The message was clear. Maya was an outsider, and would remain one. Cassian noticed the tension. One afternoon he signed to Maya, "Are the nobles being mean to you because of us? Because we're deaf?" "Oh, sweetheart, no," Maya signed back, pulling him into a hug. "The nobles are being difficult because change is scary for people who benefit from the way things are. It has nothing to do with you and Lyra. You two are perfect exactly as you are, but they don't want father to build schools for deaf children. Cassian persisted. I heard the servants talking. They said it's too expensive, and we're not worth it. Maya's heart broke. She knelt down to be at his eye level. Listen to me carefully. You and your sister are worth everything. Every gold coin, every moment of effort, every change we make. And this isn't just about you two. It's about every deaf child in this kingdom who deserves the same opportunities as hearing children. The nobles who oppose this aren't bad people. They're just scared and short-sighted. We'll change their minds. Cassian studied her face. You're very brave. You could agree with them and have an easier life. But you don't. That's what love looks like. Maya signed. Real love means fighting for people even when it's hard. Even when others tell you to stop. Your father taught me that, actually. He never gave up on you two. Never stopped trying to find ways to help you. Even when he didn't know how. That's the kind of parent I want to be too. The boy threw his arms around her waist. I'm glad father married you. I'm glad too, Maya signed when he pulled back. Very glad. That night, the opposition came to a head. A formal petition reached Theron, signed by half the noble houses, requesting that Queen Maya's educational proposal be tabled indefinitely, and that her influence on policy be curtailed. It was a direct challenge to both of them. Theron read the petition in his study, Maya standing beside him. When he finished, he set it down carefully, his expression carved from ice. They've overplayed their hand, he said quietly. What do you mean? These signatures include several houses that owe the crown significant debt, 3 lords who've been under investigation for tax fraud, and Lady Cordelia, who I happen to know has been embezzling from charitable funds for years. He looked up at her. They've given me leverage. I can either accept this petition and let you be diminished, or I can crush them politically and make it clear that you have my complete support. But crushing them will make enemies, Maya said. Permanent ones. I know. His gray eyes met hers. So the question is, are you committed to this? To the changes you want to make? To being my queen in full? To facing down the opposition together? Because once I respond to this petition, there's no going back. We'll have declared war on the old guard. Maya thought about Cassian's question earlier. About whether the children were worth it. She thought about every deaf child in the kingdom who couldn't communicate with their own families. She thought about the schools that could exist, the lives that could be changed. And she thought about Theron, who'd been alone for so long before opening his heart to her. I'm committed, she said firmly. I won't back down from what's right just because it's difficult. Good, Theron said. Then let's show them exactly who they're dealing with. The next day, King Theron called an emergency council session. Maya sat beside him, wearing the formal crown she'd rarely used, projecting every bit of queenly authority she could muster. Noble houses filled the council chamber, whispering amongst themselves about what the king might say. Theron stood, and silence fell immediately. I've received your petition, he began, his voice carrying through the hall. I've read each signature, considered each house's position, and I've decided on my response. The petition is denied. Maya's educational proposal will move forward with full royal backing and unlimited treasury support. Furthermore, any noble house that signed this petition will be investigated for financial irregularities. Those found guilty of fraud or embezzlement will have their titles stripped and lands confiscated. The chamber erupted in protests. Lord Bastian leapt to his feet. Your Majesty, this is tyranny. You cannot punish noble dissent. I'm not punishing dissent, Theron said coldly. I'm investigating corruption that your petition revealed. It's fascinating how the houses most opposed to helping deaf children are the same ones that have been stealing from the crown for years. You wanted to curtail my wife's influence because you feared she'd expose your crimes. That ends now. Lady Cordelia stood, her face pale. You're destroying centuries of alliance over a human commoner and her pet project. I'm protecting my children and all children like them, Theron corrected. And my wife is not a commoner. She is your queen, and you will show her respect or you will leave my court permanently." His eyes swept the room. "Let me be absolutely clear. Queen Maya has my complete trust and confidence. Her policies are my policies. Her enemies are my enemies. Any attack on her will be treated as an attack on the crown itself. Choose your next moves very carefully." The political fallout was immediate and dramatic. 3 noble houses fled the court entirely, rather than face investigation. Lady Cordelia was found guilty of embezzlement and exiled to a remote estate with her titles revoked. Lord Bastian survived scrutiny, but lost considerable influence. The remaining nobles got the message loud and clear. Queen Maya was untouchable. But more importantly, the resistance crumbled. Once the corrupt opposition was removed, the remaining council members found they actually supported educational reform. Maya's proposal passed with overwhelming majority. Construction began on the first integrated school within a month. Teachers from across the realm were trained in sign language. Deaf citizens started appearing in positions of influence throughout the kingdom, no longer relegated to the margins. The transformation wasn't instant, but it was real. 6 months after the council confrontation, Maya stood in the courtyard of the first completed school, watching children of all abilities learning together. Deaf students signed to hearing classmates. Teachers used both spoken language and signs simultaneously. A little girl who reminded Maya of her sister was explaining mathematics to a classmate using hand shapes and dramatic gestures. It was everything she'd dreamed of. Theron's arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against his chest. "Proud of yourself?" He murmured against her hair. "Proud of us," she corrected. "You made this possible. I just had the idea. You wielded the power to implement it. That's partnership." They stood like that, watching the children play, until small hands tugged at Maya's skirt. She looked down to find Cassian and Lyra, now 6 years old and growing so fast it made her heart ache. "Come play with us," Lyra signed enthusiastically. "We're teaching the new students about dragons." Allegedly teaching them about dragons, Cassian corrected with his usual precision. "We're actually making them up as we go along." "Close enough," Lyra signed with a dramatic eye roll. Maya laughed and let the twins pull her toward the group of children. Theron followed, his expression soft with contentment. For the next hour, the king and queen of the vampire realm sat on the ground with students, signing stories about dragons and knights, listening to children's ideas, answering questions about castle life and whether vampires really slept in coffins, which, no, they did not. That was a ridiculous myth. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Maya gathered the twins for the journey back to the palace. Both children were exhausted from playing, their clothes grass-stained and hair wild. Perfect. In the carriage, Lyra climbed into Maya's lap while Cassian leaned against his father. Both were drowsing, the day's excitement catching up with them. Maya met Theron's eyes over their heads, and he smiled, genuine and warm and full of love. "This is everything," she signed one-handed, careful not to disturb Lyra. Family. Purpose. Change that matters. I never imagined I could have all of this. "You deserve all of this and more," Theron signed back. "You've given me back my children. You've given my kingdom a conscience. You've given me a reason to believe in love again. What could I possibly give you that would equal that?" "You already gave it to me," Maya signed. "A home. A family. The chance to make a real difference. That's worth more than anything." When they reached the palace, Theron carried a sleeping Cassian while Maya carried Lyra. They tucked both children into bed, pulling blankets up and pressing kisses to foreheads. In the hallway outside the nursery, Theron pulled Maya close. "I've been thinking about our conversation months ago. About mortality and time. Have you made a decision? About the blood bond?" Maya nodded slowly. "I want it. Not now, but eventually. I want to see these children grow up. I want to finish the work we started. And I want to spend my life, however long that becomes, With you. Are you certain? Because once it's done, there's no reversal. You'll be bound to me, to vampire magic, for centuries. I'm certain, Maya said firmly. I choose this family. I choose this life. I choose you. He kissed her then, deep and tender and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he whispered, "Thank you for taking a chance on a desperate vampire king and his children. Thank you for seeing worth in a poor village teacher," Maya countered. "Though I think we can both agree this turned out better than either of us expected." "Much better," he agreed. He took her hand, leading her toward their shared chambers. They'd been married almost a year now, and the political arrangement had transformed into something real and deep and unshakable. Tomorrow they'd face whatever challenges the kingdom presented. Tomorrow there would be more schools to build, more policies to implement, more opposition to face down. But tonight, they had each other, and the quiet knowledge that they'd built something beautiful from an impossible beginning. Years later, when historians wrote about the reign of King Theron and Queen Maya, they'd note the educational reforms, the expansion of rights for deaf citizens, the schools that spread across the realm. They'd document the political battles and the transformed court, but they'd miss the most important part. The story of two people who'd agreed to a marriage of convenience and discovered that love could grow in the most unexpected places. The story of two children who'd been isolated and found their voices through sign and story. The story of a family formed not by blood alone, but by choice and courage and commitment. In the nursery, Cassian and Lyra slept peacefully, dreaming of dragons and adventures, and a world that was finally learning to listen. And in their chambers, Theron and Maya held each other close, grateful beyond words for the accident of spilled wine and desperate proposals and love that defied expectations. The vampire king had proposed on the spot to keep a poor teacher near his children. But what he'd gained was infinitely more. He'd gained a partner, a love, a future full of hope. And Maya, who'd only wanted to help two isolated children, had gained a family and a kingdom and a love that would last for centuries. All because she'd known sign language and had the courage to use it when it mattered most.